The following week settled into something that looked like peace. But it wasn't peace. It was recalculation. Claire stopped talking about renovations. The folder she had left on the kitchen counter, filled with paint samples and contractor estimates, disappeared quietly. The conversations about opening up the floor plan and modernizing the kitchen evaporated overnight. Instead, she became careful. Too careful. She began asking small, measured questions. How long did Harold work with Mr. Landry? Was the foundation something recent? Did he move other assets into the trust? The questions were casual on the surface. But I've lived long enough to recognize inventory. One evening, as I folded laundry in the den, Claire sat across from me with her laptop open. I've been reading about trusts, she said lightly. Sometimes they can be amended. Yes, I replied without looking up. By the grantor. That would have been Harold. Yes. And now? Now, I said calmly, it cannot be changed without my consent. She nodded slowly. And you wouldn't consider revisiting anything? I folded one of Harold's old sweaters carefully before answering. No. The word wasn't sharp. It didn't need to be. Evan had grown quieter, too. He came home from work earlier than usual one afternoon and found me in the garden, trimming back the rose bushes Harold planted years ago. You're doing that yourself? He asked. I've done it myself before, I replied. He hesitated beside me. Claire feels blindsided. I imagine she does. He shifted his weight. She thought you trusted her. I stood upright and brushed soil from my gloves. Trust is not the same as surrender, I said. He didn't argue. He just watched as I clipped another branch cleanly at the stem. Inside the house, the atmosphere tightened again by Thursday. Claire began closing doors more firmly. Phone conversations happened outside on the patio. I noticed new documents on the dining room table, printed articles, highlighted passages. I didn't touch them. Preparation doesn't require paranoia. It requires observation. On Friday morning, something small happened that told me more than any argument could have. I went downstairs and found my mail already opened. Bills neatly stacked. An envelope from the bank placed aside. Claire stood at the kitchen island, stirring her coffee. I sorted the mail for you, she said. I prefer to do that myself, I replied. It's just easier this way. There was that word again. Easier. For who? I asked quietly. She didn't answer. Instead, she took a long sip of coffee and avoided my eyes. Later that afternoon, Mr. Patel from the bank called. Mrs. Whitmore, he said gently, I wanted to inform you that someone contacted us this morning inquiring about access to certain accounts. Did they provide authorization? I asked. No. I see. His voice lowered slightly. We did not release any information. Thank you, I said. When I hung up, I sat very still in the armchair by the window. I didn't need to guess who had called. That evening, I waited until we were all seated at the table before speaking. I received a call from the bank today, I said calmly. Claire froze mid-bite. Evan looked up. Someone attempted to inquire about account access. Silence. Claire set her fork down carefully. I was just trying to understand what we're dealing with, she said. Financial planning is important. So is permission, I replied. Evan looked between us again, tension tightening his jaw. Claire, he said quietly. I wasn't doing anything wrong, she insisted. Intent, I said softly, is not the same as action, but it reveals direction. She stood abruptly and carried her plate to the sink. I feel like I'm being treated like a criminal, she said. No, I replied evenly. You're being treated like someone who tried to remove a widow from her own home. The words landed without raised volume. That's what made them heavier. Evan remained seated. After a moment, he said quietly, Did you really set up a foundation to take the house if we push you out? I didn't, I said. Dad did. He nodded slowly. And you'd let it happen? If I were forced, I answered, yes. He leaned back in his chair and exhaled. Claire returned, arms crossed. So what now? she asked. Now, I said. We live here respectfully. She gave a small, humorless laugh. And after you? After me, I replied calmly. Depends entirely on the choices made before that. That night, I went upstairs and opened Harold's leather folder again. Not because I doubted anything. Because I wanted to remind myself. Protection isn't about winning. It's about boundaries. Harold had drawn them years ago. Claire had tested them. Evan was standing in the middle of them. And I understood something clearly for the first time since that dinner. This was no longer about forcing me out. It was about control. And control is uncomfortable when it shifts. I closed the folder and turned off the lamp. Downstairs, I could hear low voices again. Whispers. Strategizing. They were adjusting. So was I. Because protection only works if you're willing to use it. And I was.